We're feeding hay and silage that would normally be fed in the winter. The farm looks like a dust bowl. It's absolutely burnt brown.
Net zero, it will render us uneconomic. Far from setting an example that other countries will follow, they'll say, oh, let's not be as mad as the Brits.
Kemi Badenoch has said that actually getting rid of the Climate Act, if you don't support that, then you cannot be a member of the Conservative Parliamentary Party.
Is Theresa May welcome in the party? She's the one who started this climate legislation.
If I was in your position, Mad, it's certainly a question I would ask.
Hello and welcome to the Fourcast. I'm Matt Frei. Now imagine it's 2019 and Theresa May has just made history by making the UK the first major economy to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Fast forward 7 years, and so much has changed inside the Conservative Party. The new leader, Kemi Badenoch, has said she would repeal net zero. She's even begun a purge of those who support it. All this comes as the UK bakes in heatwave after heatwave, and poll after poll shows that the public is in favour of action on climate change. But what kind of action? Meanwhile, farmers, a traditional base of Conservative support, continue to suffer from drought conditions that are made worse by us burning fossil fuels. So, as Britain bakes in yet another heatwave, we wanted to speak to people with a stake in the Tory party's changing climate policy. I'm joined by Tory MP Graham Stuart, who served as Energy and Net Zero Minister, Lord Peter Lilley, the former Cabinet Minister who's part of the Net Zero Scrutiny Group, as well as the crossbench peer Baroness Minette, the former president of the National Farmers Union, who in 2019 set the farming sector its own goal of net zero. Welcome to you all. Minette, if I could start with you, I gather you have a farm. You are a farmer, as it were. You must be having a particularly bad summer.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. We're predominantly beef on the farm, so we've got a beef herd, spring and autumn calving. We're feeding hay and silage that would normally be fed in the winter. And the farm looks like a dust bowl. It's absolutely burnt brown. The trees are the only greenery, and all the grass has dried up. I mean, it's the longest period without rain. And not only without rain, really searing temperatures. It's 33 degrees today on the farm. Day after day, it's relentless. So it's very tough. I mean, we're vital for us that we've got trees, which is providing shade for the cattle.
And where do you stand on the science?
Look, I think the trouble is climate change, net zero as phrases have all become weaponized, if you like. What we are seeing is ever more extreme weather events, and we've got to build business resilience to deal with them. So I'm very much focused on what we need to do rather than what we call it, because I think that helps get rid of the toxicity around names.
But is it important to call it something? And the scientists, the majority of them seem to be very clear that this is caused by carbon emissions. Is it important to call it something? Because resilience is dealing with the symptoms of it. By going to net zero, they would argue you're dealing with the causes of it.
Well, look, climate change is real. We are getting really extreme weather events, so we're getting roughly the same amount of rainfall in a year, but in a much shorter period of time. That is creating flooding in the winter, which we've seen play out. And we're getting these long, dry, hot summers. So that means that we have to react differently if we are going to deal with the problem. So I'm not denying that. It's real. It's happening. I mean, surely nobody could deny that we are living through ever more extreme weather as the result of changes with the climate.
And would you personally like to see, yourself, but also the country and the government stick to net zero targets?
We know, climate change is global, so it isn't just about us. I mean, we're a lot more efficient than many countries as far as agriculture goes. If we had all the cows in the world as efficient as a UK dairy cow, we'd need about a third of the cows that we've got. So climate change is global. It means that everybody playing their part. If the UK does it alone and goes harder and faster, what we're going to do is offshore our production. And what we've got to do is take responsibility for what we're doing here and provide global leadership for the changes. But I mean, this shouldn't be anti or not beneficial to our economy. A lot of the focuses that I'm looking at on the farm, the policies, the incentives are actually good for the business. We need to be producing the same amount or more food. We need to have less impact, and we need to cut our costs. Those are all, climate smart farming decisions that can be made that are business beneficial. So the danger is, I think, when you say we've got to shut down a sector or we've got to produce a lot less of that sector, you're just offshoring it. And often your imports have got higher emissions. That's what I think we've got to be avoiding.
Okay, Peter Lilley, your response to what Minette just had to say.
I think the science is incontestable. I suppose science is always contestable, but I studied physics at Cambridge, and I've never had any doubt that global warming is the result, or an inevitable result, of more CO2 in the atmosphere is global warming. But that doesn't alter the fact that we have to compare costs and benefits of action. You referred to the public concern because of the weather we're facing now, that we must do something. But who is we? The world must do something. If we do something unilaterally, where we count for 0.8% of the world's emissions, because we've already taken more action than anybody else, it will have a negligible effect on the amount of global warming in Britain or anywhere else. But and indeed, it may even have a perverse effect, as Minette says, because we'll offshore emissions to countries where they are less clean, using coal and so on. So it may actually marginally increase the amount of emissions, but it will render us uneconomic. And far from setting an example that other countries will follow, they'll say, oh, let's not be as mad as the Brits.
I mean, Graham Stuart, this is tricky, isn't it? Because on one hand, if we just point the finger at everyone else not doing as much as we thought we were doing, we're still going to live in on a hotter planet. Minette's farm is still going to look, drier, every year. It's not going to solve the problem. So what is the solution?
The challenge is a global one. So when you talk, Matt, and many people do, saying, oh, we just must show leadership, you have to show a form of leadership in which others follow you. And if you end up with the most expensive electricity in the world, well, you find out you can't decarbonize the hardest areas like heat and transport and industry. So that's not a leadership. If you impoverish yourself and you lose your industry so that your chemical plants, your refineries, your other factories shut down and you import from elsewhere, no one is going to follow that. So the truth is we have cut our emissions by more than any other major economy in the world. And I was, as you said, Matt, in your introduction, a minister who helped deliver that. But the Climate Change Act says decarbonize or bust. And deindustrializing this country isn't an effective route to decarbonization. It doesn't show global leadership. And that's why, having done an awful lot, we now need to recalibrate, still stay focused for all the reasons that has been said on decarbonizing, but do so in a way that balances it with energy affordability, competitiveness, and our overall, energy security.
One of the problems with all this is that, it's been, the debate has been framed as either you have growth or you go for net zero. And actually, you could do both, can't you? I mean, there's money to be made. There are jobs to be created. Minette, you're nodding, so I'm going to go to you. How have we got into a place where it's one or the other?
Yeah, look, speaking from agriculture, food, we really got in a mess in the last parliament about, it wasn't important to be producing food here. We were a wealthy nation, effectively. The scientific advice since the last financial crash, when John Beddington, as chief scientist, was saying, we've got to act. We are facing the perfect storm of water insecurity, energy insecurity, and geopolitics colliding, the perfect storm of 2030. Then the markets took off again. And what you saw was just a very relaxed attitude, and the fact that we could move to this new world whereby we'd be far more reliant on imports. And then the world changed, and we had the war in Ukraine, situation in the Middle East, and we need to now react to that. And we need to make sure that we are energy secure, we are water secure, we are food secure, in line with what we're doing on defence. I mean, those are non-negotiables. But when you put down this legislation, and, Theresa May's parting shot when she left office to lay down that legislation, I don't feel it was thought through. It was at a time when, of course, we were leaving the European Union. We then had the global pandemic. And now we've got this primary legislation. And what we need are policies, plans, incentives to deliver the economic benefits on both. These are not either or. We've got to do all of it.
But Graham, is the problem with the high price of electricity in our country, and it is extortionate compared to our European neighbours, or the United States for that matter, is it because of the way the pricing structure works? Is it because we're not, drilling for our own stuff? Can you blame renewables? Explain to the listening public why electricity is so cripplingly expensive in this country.
Well, it's a number of factors. Partly it's been the behaviour of the Treasury, the way it's always loaded all costs back onto bill payers, which is kind of hidden costs which comes through levy costs and these things. But the fundamentals are, and one of the things Claire Coutinho did, who's the Shadow Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, when she was my boss, was try to get a proper system understanding within the Department for Energy Security of what it costs to have two systems. Because if you have an intermittent source of energy and you have to have backup for that, you're paying for two systems. And if your energy is uncompetitive, the next layer up, chemicals, refine all the key ingredients that go into all the other components, fertilizer, all the rest of it, that is uncompetitive. So that starts to die off. And then all your further, downstream industries are undermined. That's exactly where we're at. Not looking at the basic facts, which are you will ruin this country and hurt the environment if you don't get your economics right.
Minette, Baroness, can you see a kind of a nuanced approach from the Tory party at the moment? Is that what you're hearing from Kemi Badenoch?
Look, I think it's really good to hear recognition that if we don't change things, we are just going to offshore all our production. And I mean, it's interesting, the Prime Minister talking about the reindustrialization of the country. Well, that starts with affordable energy. And, there's a lot of focus on food prices, cost of living. If we could bring those energy costs down, you can help bring food prices down. But there isn't one silver bullet. There are various different things that you would do that can drive a different outcome. So I think I'm pleased to hear Kemi Badenoch taking a different approach. I'm pleased to hear the Prime Minister talking about, business. I hope there's a solid understanding now that we've got to bring energy costs down.
I guess the problem with the political debate is that it's become quite maximalist. You're either with us or you're against us. You're either, on that side or on this side. And I'm afraid it looks like Kemi Badenoch, Graham Stuart, is also guilty of that because she sort of more or less purged people in the party who don't agree with her.
Well, a different point. It goes back to the point Minette made. We've got to get this legislation through. And Kemi Badenoch has said that actually getting rid of the Climate Act, not because she doesn't believe in climate change, just as Peter and I do and the rest of it. We recognise the science, but we've got to do it in a way that's proportionate and sensible. And she said, if you don't support that, then you cannot be a member of the Conservative Parliamentary Party, because when we make an undertaking at the next election that we will revoke the Climate Change Act and we will bring forward a new energy security framework that balances the economy, energy security and competitiveness and jobs, but absolutely is focused on incentivizing decarbonisation. That balanced approach, you need to know that there isn't immediately going to be some Tory backbench rebellion.
Is Theresa May welcome in the party? She's the one who started this climate legislation.
Well, she is.
Or should she be purged?
She's a former leader of the party. I think.
I know.
I think.
Yeah, but that's a fair point, isn't it?
If I was in your position, Matt, it's certainly a question I would ask. But she's made it clear that those who come in.
You haven't given me an answer.
Well, I'm trying to. You keep interrupting me. But I was going to say, as far as the parliamentary party is concerned, as in the House of Commons, the elected part, it's absolutely clear. The Conservative Party has been and always will be a broad church. But on this is so fundamental to our economy, as all of us have discussed, the Conservative Party that got elected that couldn't then deliver on a promise it had made, that would be a disaster. And so Kemi is making sure that that's not the case. And I'm sure Theresa May will be able to give speeches and vote against if she sees fit. She will still be in the House of Lords. And I hope and expect she would still have have the Conservative whip. But that's up to Kemi and up to her, of course.
Indeed, Peter, but it's only a broad church that can win a general election. I mean, the Tory party does need to be a broad church. Isn't the danger with Kemi Badenoch's rhetoric and policy on climate change that she sounds a bit like Reform UK, and Reform UK is in one corner. You want to be in a much broader space, don't you?
You want to do the right thing. And then convince people it's the right thing, rather than saying, what space should I be in? How should I sound vis-a-vis someone else? On the whole, we should be grateful if what we say is supported by other people, even if we don't particularly like those other people and we're in political contest against them. So I don't think we should sort of change our views on the basis of focus groups and that sort of thing. Our job is to say, we think this is right for the country.
What a shocking thing to say for a politician.
But it's worked fairly well for me for the last 40 years.
Minette, I want to talk to you about farmers. You're a farmer. You know lots of farmers. You represented farmers, very effectively for a very long time. Your average farmer, if there is such a thing, he's looking at his farm that is crisp and yellow, and is basically, it's killing his income, it's killing his animals, it's killing his crops. He needs something to happen, for that not to take place in the future. At the same time, and many of these people voted, for the Tory party. They tend to be more conservative. Correct me if I'm wrong. Where do they stand politically at the moment? What would they like to see the government do? What would they like to see the opposition say? Where do they find the solution to their problems?
I think for farming to succeed, and when we talk about farming, we are talking about feeding the nation as well. So how do we feed 70 million people? I think it's pretty clear to everybody now that there are lots of things that we should be producing more of, fruit, vegetables, but also proteins, pulses, oil seeds. We should be building our resilience. So what farmers want to see is the individual plan that they are making. I'm about to make the decision, do we grow spring barley next year or not? I put the bull in with my cows that will be calving next spring. So we're making those decisions. What we need is the national plan, and the plan effectively that underpins our rural economy joined up. So I do think that out of Europe, when we're on farming on parliamentary cycles, not with multi-annual budgets that went beyond parliamentary cycles, we've got to have pretty much cross-party support here. Otherwise, if every parliament we rip everything up for how we're going to run the rural economy, it's going to be seismically bad for our economy, and it's going to be very bad for our food security.
And if you look at the general public, the opinion polls tell us, and sometimes they are quite useful, aren't they? I say this to the politicians amongst you. The opinion polls tell us that the public wants something to be done to prevent the climate from getting hotter and drier, every other year virtually. At the same time, they don't want to lose their jobs. And they don't want to pay what they're paying now for electricity. I mean, these are all very reasonable demands, aren't they, Graham? And I just wonder if they don't deserve the one thing they're not getting at the moment, which is a proper debate amongst our politicians, and I'm looking at you, Graham, in Parliament, about how this can be fixed. Because again, I get back to my earlier point, it's one thing or the other. It should be both, but, maybe approached from a fresh angle. I don't know. You tell me.
Parliamentary debate is moving in a certain direction, and we can see something there. When you get into the polling, yes, everyone wants action on climate change and they worry about its impact, but there's only a certain amount that they're prepared to pay for it. And as Peter says, we're not the problem in this country. We've done more than any other major economy on earth to cut emissions, and I was part of that, and I'm proud of that. But the problem is elsewhere, which is why my role, as well as being energy minister, was to lead our negotiations at the big climate events, the COPs. And it's the tragedy of the commons, Matt, one we're terribly familiar with. If no one owns the common, everyone just uses it and abuses it. And then if we're all dependent on it, we're wrecked. And that's the problem we've got. So our biggest role, while is to show climate leadership and understanding and support the science and help it develop, and we play a big role in that, but is to persuade others and look at getting the economic models so that the incentives for countries like ours, and also poorer countries as well, that there is an economic incentive as well as a kind of existential climate-related incentive to do the right thing. Because right now, the rest of the world is not moving at the pace that is required.
And Peter, does drill, baby, drill from Donald Trump help or hinder?
From Donald Trump helps anyone, particularly if they would like to agree with him. it would be sensible to drill both in the North Sea and indeed for shale gas onshore. If we do that, there are net fewer emissions because we don't have to transport it across the world, and gas has to be liquefied, which creates lots of emissions, then regasified, which creates a lot more before you even burn it. So producing our own is sensible. We can lead in developing new species of crops and new varieties of crops, which are more resilient to drought, which can cope better with variations in the climate. And it's very important we do that by, actually the Parliament, all parties supported the Precision Breeding Act, which allows us to do that. It's important that we maintain that and don't give it up in order to be closer to Europe. And I hope we'll go further and allow properly regulated gene modification as well. But at least we ought to be trying to produce things which will help us adapt, as well as seeking, hopefully on a worldwide basis, to speed up the move to net zero in a way that doesn't involve us acting unilaterally and crucifying our economy to no great avail.
I mean, even if we start drilling again in the North Sea, oil and gas, the price is set globally, isn't it? So would it make a difference to what people pay in their households?
Matt, that's such a terrible question. We're losing 1,000 jobs a month in the North Sea.
But is it true? Is the price set globally?
Oil is set globally. You get Ed Miliband saying oil and gas set globally, even though the price of gas in America is a quarter. That is a quarter. That would be 25% of ours. There are local markets everywhere. It's billions and billions of pounds in tax. It's improved energy security by definition. Our oil is refined for historic reasons in Europe, but it's part of a European market, European energy security. The same people who criticize it, normally obsessed by European solidarity. Well, it's absolutely, it's made there. It's tens of thousands of jobs. It's billions of tax revenue. It's improved energy security, and it's lower emissions, Matt. And one of the weirdest things about modern politics, and indeed the commentariat, is those facts are so obvious and quite hard to dispute, and yet the general conversation is still, oh, come on, these Tories, they're trying to make out that it's going to affect the global price of oil, and it makes no difference to the price of oil, and therefore it doesn't affect people in pockets. Thousands of jobs and tens of billions in tax can be used to reduce, put money in people's pocket who work in the industry, and, of course, can be used to reduce the cost of electricity to households. That's how you could use that money.
Right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much to all of you. Baroness Minette Batters, Graham Stuart and Lord Peter Lilley, it's been a pleasure. That's it for the Fourcast. Hope you're wiser.